I definitely want to see the breakdown of this because I've always said this and I stand by it. Rob Zombie's Halloween is highly underrated. It was overhated. Yes, Rob Zombie took a little different direction with Michael, but I believe it made Michael even more terrifying, in my opinion. So I'm interested in seeing what this channel has to say about it because this channel says the title is Rob Zombie's Halloween, Michael Myers' most controversial movies. I'm interested in seeing where he goes with this, he or she. I'll put the original video description below. Let's get right into it. The video's almost 30 minutes long.
Just how much can you change Michael Myers until...
Because I'll put it to you this way. I'll watch Rob Zombies over the last Halloween movies. Rob Zombies was way more terrifying than those, especially that last one. What was it? Halloween Ends. That was in that. Yeah, Rob. I'll watch his any time of day over the latest ones.
Just how much can you change Michael Myers until he's no longer the shape we know and love? In 2007, the Halloween franchise was reborn with Rob Zombie's modern remake, simply titled Halloween. And despite the film's mixed reception upon release, its box office was the financial shot in the arm that the franchise had been in search of for years. That was quickly followed up by Zombie's own Halloween 2 in 2009.
That one was
a movie
a little
that's
weird.
Possibly even more divisive than
that
the
was a little
previous
weird.
film,
It was
but
entertaining,
without the
but
big
weird.
bucks to back it up. And so, in the span of only a few years, Michael Myers and horror's original slasher franchise slammed head-on into the 2000s trend of gritty, hopeless remakes, only to be quickly left searching for a future. In the time since, Zombie's 2 Halloween films have caused a massive spectrum of opinions from the franchise's fans, ranging from rejection to reclamation. But as the stories of Michael Myers have looked back to the past and worked to dissociate from these 2 reimaginings, Halloween 2007 and Halloween 2 from 2009 have become massive outliers in a franchise that just can't seem to stop going through rebirths that quickly hit dead ends. Years later, what do Zombies films reveal about the possibilities and limitations of Halloween? What behind-the-scenes battles compromised his remake? And why is Halloween 2 quietly one of the strongest movies in the series? This is Rob Zombie's Halloween duology. Michael Myers' most controversial era.
But his movies, especially that second one, really had me glued.
Our story begins in 2002 with the release of Halloween Resurrection. And as I discussed in my video last year on the H2O Resurrection reboot, the success of H2O was snuffed out by Resurrection's terrible bullshit. Afterward, Dimension Films still held production rights alongside producer Mustafa Akkad and Trancas International Films, and were intent on making more. It was around this time in the early 2000s that many potential films were pitched and written, which I discussed in my previous unmade Halloween sequels video.
That was another thing, I'm sorry, because they were showcasing all the other Halloweens. It was a big, that's one of the reasons I totally disagree with people when they said Rob Zombies was the worst in the Halloween franchise. Have you seen some of the other Halloween movies? I'm talking about before the Rob Zombie ones. The ones they kept making after like the second or third one. No, this is nowhere near worse than those. Like there are some stinker Halloween movies. And to say Rob Zombies was the worst is a big disservice. Like that's crazy.
Proposed crossover with Hellraiser ever made it far. But all work on
Wait,
another
there
Halloween
was a what?
film.
A crossover in the plans? With Hellraiser?
Which I discussed in my previous unmade Halloween sequels video. None of these, including a proposed crossover with Hellraiser, ever made it far. But all work on another Halloween film was stopped.
I see where they can go with that, but still, that's interesting.
Who was killed in the terrorist bombings in Amman, Jordan on November 9th, 2005. Akkad was with his daughter, 34-year-old Rima Akkad Monla, when the hotel lobby they were in was attacked. Rima died in the explosion, while Mustafa passed 2 days later at the age of 75. The man who helped bring Halloween to life back in 1978 was gone, with his son Malik Akkad, who had helped produce H2O and Resurrection, now fully in charge of the series' future. It was soon decided that the franchise needed a different direction, and that direction led them to one man. Rob Zombie, born Robert Cummings but eventually legally changing his name, came to fame in the late 80s and early 90s as the lead singer of the heavy metal band White Zombie, before going solo and gaining attention for his horror-inspired, filth-covered aesthetic. Zombie also directed plenty of his own music videos before signing a deal with Universal Pictures to make House of a Thousand Corpses, which the director and writer would go on to describe as a vile, backwoods, hillbilly murder fest. And that's kind of how you could describe most of Mr. Robert Undead's filmography. House of a Thousand Corpses was actually filmed in the year 2000, but wasn't released until 2003 because Universal Pictures, who had financed the movie, deemed it unreleasable due to its violent and dark nature. And yeah, Corpses is pretty dark and not meant for the mainstream, but I think it's more an unpleasant experience than something that's gonna warp minds.
Oh wow, look at
Cecil.
Cecil.
Universal dumped it, with Lionsgate eventually
He's in
picking
a lot
it
of
up and
projects
the film
now.
performing solidly at the box office, leading to its sequel, The Devil's Rejects, which performed even better. With Zombie gaining attention in the horror sphere, Akkad and Dimension soon signed him on for the next Halloween installment. But this wasn't a sequel, a partial reboot with selective memory, or a prequel. This was the franchise's first, and so far only, I'm sure that'll age poorly, remake. Remaking a classic will always be a controversial choice, and will almost never be able to match the love fans have for the original. But 2000s horror remakes are a special breed. Now, let's not pretend that this era of remakes is something new in the history of horror. They've been happening regularly since cinema began. It's just that in the 2000s, major studios decided it was finally time to remake some of the foundational
that
films
2003
of the modern era,
Texas
especially those in the
Chainsaw
slasher subgenre.
classic. I actually like
Some
that one
did
better
well
than
and
the
were
original.
enjoyed by established fans. Some crashed and burned
That
both critically
2003
and
had me.
financially.
That
A
Texas
lot of
Chainsaw
this
had me
comes in the midst
uneasy,
of the
bro,
new
for a
French
while.
extremity wave and the so-called torture porn trend that coincided with the United States War on Terror. These remakes weren't really trying to tie their updates to modern issues, but instead to simply create aesthetics and a brutality that matched the trend. And Halloween, while falling in line with Zombie's approach to the social outcast sociopath, is part of that larger movement. If you had to describe Zombie's output in one word, both in music and film, it would be hellbilly. It's gothic, it's punk, it's a grimy blend of industrial and southern, all done in a very overtly theatrical manner. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is such a clear influence that his decision to remake Halloween, a very subdued and almost classical approach to a killer on the loose, is surprising. And that clash of influence, interest, and source material makes the Halloween remake a very odd beast. When reflecting on the unifying ideas of his films, Zombie revealed that he'd always been drawn to the outsider mentality of horror, punk rock, and the various arts he connected to since he was young. Monster movies aligned with that outlook, as the director said that he often related to the monster as a kid, feeling rejected and misunderstood by society. But the so-called monsters of Zombie's films aren't creatures or demons. They're regular people whose minds and bodies have been twisted, causing them to be ostracized by society just because they love murder. Oh, those poor perverts. Zombie is often trying to get us to sympathize with and even root for his disgusting, sexually deviant, fried chicken devouring, juggalo-adjacent spree killers. Sometimes that works better than others. And when you apply that lens to Halloween, you suddenly get a very different focus and yet the exact same movie. Naturally, the slasher became much more brutal and transgressive over time as audiences became used to the subgenre. And while the franchise leveled up its violence over the decades, Halloween was always more about tension and the threat of death than the kills themselves. For Zombie, every death in his versions is brutal, long and drawn out, full of struggle, screaming, and begging. Original Michael relentlessly pursues and then quickly kills. Remake Michael is a hulking beast, played by the 6'8" Tyler Mane, who bull rushes his prey, slamming into them and just demolishing them. He is a near supernaturally strong force of destruction, making even big ol' Ken Foree look small in comparison. So much of the slasher formula is to create tension, pop up and scare, attack in a violent but fast manner, and move on to the next set piece. Zombie's approach lingers, punishes, and wobbles around in the aftermath like the film's suffering from the worst hangover ever. Zombie's Halloween remake is half prequel, half redo. Instead of a brief prologue that reveals Michael's first murder, the entire first half revolves around young Michael's childhood, detailing the abusive household he grew up in and his burgeoning psychopathy, leading to multiple murders, his psychological character Dr. Loomis, played here by Malcolm McDowell, and his eventual escape to the night he came home. The biggest difference between original and remake is that Zombie is really trying to get us to understand Michael.
And it's not to justify Michael. Like when I say the good way, I ain't talking about you understand. Like I understand why he does what he does. No, I'm saying it makes you understand who Michael is. Rob Zombie did the better version of help you understand why he is the way he is. I'm not defending his actions at all.
Played by Dave Fair.
Yeah.
We see his abuse.
His storytelling
we see
was
the
done
ways
better,
in which
I'll put it
a
that
mental
way.
health disorder arises and changes him, and how the system fails. And Michael, with the young version played by Dave Fairsh. We see his abuse. We see the ways in which a mental health disorder arises and changes him, and how the system fails him. This is the complete antithesis of Carpenter's original, and most every Halloween movie made before or since, give or take a rune here or there. There's a reason Michael is referred to as the Shape. This is pure evil in the form of a man. He has no identity, no emotion, no real reason for his killings. He is simply pure evil that cannot be explained. And that's a pure Carpenter idea, revisited in the director's later films like Prince of Darkness. But Zombie isn't interested in monolithic evil. He's intrigued by broken, crazy people who we get to understand over time. So what did my man John Carpenter think about the remake and Rob Zombie? Years later, Carpenter said, "He lied about me. He said I was very cold to him when he told me he was going to make it. Nothing could be further from the truth. I said, make it your own movie, man. This is yours now. Don't worry about me." I was incredibly supportive. Why that piece of shit lied, I don't know. And about the reboots, Michael, Carpenter said, I thought he took away the mystique of the story by explaining too much about Michael Myers. I don't care about that. He's supposed to be a force of nature. He's supposed to be almost supernatural, and he was too big. Michael is easily the most
developed character. If that's the case, then John Carpenter shouldn't have, and I'm not against John Carpenter at all, he has his opinion, but if you want him just to be this figure, then they wouldn't have had that beginning when Michael was a kid. You know what I'm saying? It just, the movie would have started out him, like it would have been like how Friday the 13th Part 2 was, where Jason just shows up. You know, that's how Michael would be, if you wanted to just be there. But if you inserted that kid situation in the beginning, even though it was short, you know, it's going to make people wonder. More than just, I just want him to be this figure. In my opinion.
Of the remake.
I'm not against John. Everybody has their opinion on how they want to make it, but if you wanted it that way, you would have never had that beginning.
Solid as Laurie here, the character is severely limited by a second-half speed run. This is not truly Laurie's movie. And alongside a returning Danielle Harris, who this time plays Annie Brackett, and Christina Klebb as Linda, Laurie's story is almost an afterthought. McDowell's Loomis is also an asshole, the degree of which depending on the cut of the movie. He starts out as wanting to help, becomes disillusioned by Michael's emotionless evil, and eventually wants to profit off his years taking care of the slasher. I think Zombie's outlook on the world is pretty clear, as movie after movie are filled with terrible people saying the worst shit imaginable, and almost everyone hating each other.
I hope she likes cripples.
I will crawl over there and I will
I'll get the crutches for you.
Then they die horrible deaths. With the remake made before any attempt to erase the Michael-Laurie sibling retcon, the entirety of this version of Halloween is made in the full knowledge that they're brother and sister, and naturally, that changes the meaning of the movie and Michael's actions. Specifically, Zombie shows baby Laurie, named Angel Myers before her adoption, as the only person that Michael loved and was tender toward, sparing her during his much deadlier childhood attack. Given that this Michael slowly loses the ability to communicate as he grows, hiding behind makeshift masks and becoming increasingly violent, we lose the ability to know what's going on in Michael's mind, but we glimpse his attempt to get Laurie to understand that they're family. Really, Michael just wants to be with the one person he loves. He just, kills a bunch of people to get to her. And yet, Halloween 2007 clocks in at 1 hour 50 minutes, whereas the original was an hour 31. That's only 20 extra minutes for what is essentially double the amount of story. And I think this split in focus is the film's biggest weakness. Zombie is clearly most interested in Michael. He paints him as a sympathetic character, especially in the first half, causing the remake of Halloween proper to not start until the halfway point, with Laurie and friends sprinting through all the same story beats of the original. I would say that both of Zombie's Halloween films, whatever you think of them, succeed in being scary, because their portrayals of insanity and violence feel unsanitized and unpolished. While I wouldn't go so far as to say they feel real, I think they feel immediate, unflinching, and cruel. But Zombie's approach to filmmaking and what his producers at Dimension, Bob and Harvey Weinstein, wanted didn't align. Zombie recalled that the production and post-production was absolute hell due to constantly dealing with the Weinsteins. Their interference included endless verbal assaults and firing the editor chosen by Zombie and hiring another, who Zombie said he never actually used, only bringing him in to appease the producers. And when the film had poor test screenings, reshoots were quickly done to add more violence and change the ending. So it's no surprise that several different cuts of the film exist, each providing a somewhat different outlook on Michael and Laurie.
I've never seen the
There's
other
a lot
cuts.
of
I only
detailed
seen the original
breakdowns out there
version.
about all the differences.
I'm gonna have
But
to check
what's
that out. I've
important
never
to know
seen
is that there are
the
three
unedited
existing
version,
versions.
unrated
The
version.
theatrical version, the director's cut, which is 10 minutes longer, and a leaked work print cut, made before reshoots. The theatrical and director's cut have the same ending, with Laurie tackled out of the house by Michael and shooting him. But the director's cut has more character development and gross assault scenes, while the work print cut has the original ending, with Michael killed by a hail of police fire, underlining his tragedy and Loomis's genuine care for him. However, the unrated director's cut is the most widely available, released on home video, and now the default version found on streaming and to rent. Halloween opened on August 31st, 2007, making $30 million over the 4-day Labor Day
It's been that
weekend,
long?
a
Goodness
holiday
gracious.
record for the time, and grossing a total of $80 million against its $15 million budget. That's more than any other film in the franchise had grossed so far, including the
That's why
original
let's start the
without
second
accounting
one.
for inflation. Dimension finally had a hit
forget
on its
Weinstein,
hands and
let's
naturally
start the
wanted
second
to
one.
make another. In the lead up to the remake, Zombie had signed a 3-picture deal with the studio, but he simply didn't want to work with the Weinsteins again, and I can't blame him. With a sequel going
fair, I
nowhere
don't blame
fast
him.
without him, he agreed to return on one condition, revealing years later that he told the producers, "I'll direct it if you let me out of the third picture. I'm the only guy that negotiates lower picture deals." With the contract locked in and Zombie much more free to make the movie he wanted, we arrive at Halloween 2.
This
I
one
know
was
he's not
very
gonna come
interesting.
back just because of some stupid holiday.
Halloween 2 is, in my opinion, easily one of the best films of the franchise. It's gritty, it's brutal, it's relentlessly dark in a way that's uncomfortably close to
Yeah.
reality, and it's all about the aftermath of trauma and how violence leaves mental and emotional scars that some people will never truly move beyond. We open in the immediate aftermath of the first as a bloodied and broken Laurie wanders away from a seemingly dead Michael, and Zombie details the horrible injuries and disturbing ways she needs to be physically put back together, most of which I'll have to blur because it's rough. But Laurie can't
got to
be
blur a few
mentally
things in
mental.
that movie.
We then jump to 2 years later, one in the theatrical cut, as Laurie, taken in by the surviving Annie and Sheriff Brackett, struggles with her trauma as Michael returns to claim her. Propelled by visions of their mother, Sherry Moon Zombie, who I think is legally required to be in every movie made by her husband, his younger self, and a white horse. Eventually, these two collide on Halloween night, with Laurie's friends and the even more prickish Dr. Loomis caught in the crossfire. As of today, there have been 3 Halloween movies that to some degree address Laurie's recovery after her encounters with Michael. In Halloween H2O, Laurie has completely changed her identity but struggles with alcoholism, as she hides her past from everyone she knows. Eventually, Laurie beats her demons by chopping Michael's head off. Total catharsis. Don't worry about resurrection. In Halloween 2018, Laurie has become a heavily armed survivalist, waiting for the day Michael comes after her again, and in the decades of paranoia and prep, has alienated her daughter, granddaughter, and entire family. In the end, Laurie and the 2 generations that follow her are able to trap and destroy the Shape, overcoming trauma through sheer willpower. Don't worry about Halloween kills and ends. In Zombies Halloween 2, there is no real catharsis or healing. Quite the opposite, in fact. In developing the sequel, Akkad told Zombie that he could make the movie his own, no longer needing to adhere to the franchise's mythology or tropes that were mandated by his father. And boy did he. Halloween 2 is really just jettisoning everything sacred about the franchise to make this its own movie, and that's why I think it works so much better than the remake. First off, Michael barely wears his mask, wandering in the middle of nowhere and only putting it on when he attacks. Even then, the old, damaged mask is torn apart, revealing the broken human underneath.
I was about to say, I love
Meanwhile,
the
Laurie struggles with terrible
elements of
trauma
that.
and slipping sanity, damaging her relationship with Annie and Sheriff Brackett, who have taken her into their family. And I just have to say that Danielle Harris is amazing here, creating a damaged but still loving Annie who
going
the
to
film
watch that,
clearly
both of
cares
those
about.
again,
I think
back
her
to back,
death at a
because-
returning Michael's hands
Yeah.
is almost too tragic.
It always
and
captivated
Zombie
me,
knows it
especially
too,
that second
not
one.
showing it on screen,
seeing the
whereas
stuff
every
again
other attack
reminded
is
me how
shown.
great it
Sheriff
was.
Brackett discovering her body, complete with real footage of a young Harris, is so real and traumatic that we accept that this was a real person with a life and family. There's nothing enjoyable or vicariously thrilling about it. And Brad Dourif is incredible in this movie. Maybe his best performance amongst decades of god-tier work. as a broken down man trying to be a good father and surrogate father in a world that he knows is a terrible place to be. It's so sad, but Halloween 2 isn't afraid to show that, and that's why it's so good. But please never do anything bad to Danielle Harris again. I like her too much to handle any more of this. There are, however, some clearly mandated elements made to appease fan
The
expectations.
famous pose of that
The opening
movie.
sequence of Michael's hospital rampage, complete with the pre-fame Octavia Spencer, is a dream
Dude went
sequence designed
insane.
to give us the slasher thrills we expect, and that are basically absent from the rest of the movie. I think the worst parts of this movie are anything revolving around Michael's attacks. Halloween 2 takes several breaks from its story to introduce a new group of characters, who are usually total scum, and then have them run into the wandering Michael, who brutally kills them. It's all pretty grotesque and miserable and has so little to do with the point that Zombie is trying to make. If Zombie had dropped some of those sequences, I'd really be impressed by the film. And honestly, if this movie had dropped the Halloween branding entirely, I think it would have had a very different reception from fans, because this is so very much not a Halloween movie. Then again, neither is Halloween 3, and that film has been totally reclaimed by fans in the decades since it was made. We've had plenty of Halloween movies that are faithful to the central concept and structure of
refresh my
Carpenter's
memory of
original
Halloween
in the
3,
time
I don't
before or
remember.
since. I am happy to see something very different done once in a while within a franchise that will outlast all of its creators. Laurie's psychosis, even more pronounced than the director's
I
cut,
like though that
puts the
Rob Zombie
character
put
on
the
a
story in
very different
Halloween.
path.
It
With
brought
Zombie
more
saying,
to
as Laurie
Michael.
is Michael's sister, I'm playing it like he is clearly insane, and so is she. But her insanity doesn't manifest itself in the same way. Michael Myers was clearly insane by age 10, so I figured, well, maybe hers comes at age 19. So that's pretty much what it is. She is slipping into insanity throughout the whole movie. Both of these movies are trashy on purpose, filled with crude and often unlikable characters. But those who are given the spotlight become very human and lovable, with Zombie giving them a heart and tenderness that makes their fates even more tragic. That especially becomes clear as Laurie, Annie, Sheriff Brackett, and even Michael are suffering from deep mental and emotional scars that make their physical ones look minor in comparison. In contrast, Loomis has become an egotistical, fame-hungry pop psychologist, exploiting Michael's rampage for
I
money
did not
and
like him at
attention.
all.
It's definitely not the crusading, trigger-happy, child-endangering hero that Donald Pleasance brought to life for decades, and, once again, a cause for fans to be alienated by this movie. Despite Zombie being given much more free reign with number 2, the production was still miserable for the director, and surprise surprise, the result was another director's cut of the movie that was released on home video, and there's absolutely no comparison.
I
Zombie's
didn't see
director's
the
cut
like
is
I only
vastly
saw the
superior.
theatrical.
The biggest
on both of
difference
these.
is the ending.
I gotta
In
check
the
these
theatrical
other
cut, the
versions.
climactic standoff ends with Laurie stabbing Michael multiple times, killing him and taking his mask, now fully consumed by madness and locked away, seeing the vision of her mother and the white horse as seemingly the new shape. In the director's cut, Michael is shot down by police, and when Laurie attempts to finish off the dying Loomis, she's shot too, dying and seeing the white horse vision as she passes away. Both are extremely dark endings, but the director's cut is 14 minutes longer and is more intent on having us sit in the sadness and trauma of its characters. That makes the film more uncomfortable and darker, but that's the whole point of the movie. Like the original Halloween 2, this movie is designed to be the end of Laurie and Michael's story. It also didn't do nearly as well as the remake, gaining $39 million against a $15 million budget. Where can you really go after this version of Halloween 2? Whether
that
you
was
end
the
the film with
closing.
Laurie insane or dead, making a part 3 would require either a massive revision or a completely different approach that would likely alienate a decent portion of the fan base, especially after Zombie's movies frustrated so many. But well, they tried. Zombie, true to his word, was done with the series. But the Weinsteins had been planning part 3 anyway with Todd Farmer, writer of Jason X and the My Bloody Valentine remake, and Patrick Lussier, who had directed the Valentine remake. However, their 3D movie following an institutionalized Laurie and a still-alive Michael, which ends with Michael mercy-killing his sister, couldn't get made due to the Weinstein Company's financial issues despite being fast-tracked. A second version, written by Steph Hitchinson, also wasn't made due to lack of money.
I
This
didn't know
time
all
focused
that.
on Sheriff Brackett wanting revenge. And after considering many different pitches for many different sequels and reboots, Dimension officially lost the rights to the series in 2015, 20 years and 5 movies after first purchasing them. What would come next with David Gordon Green's reboot of the series is a story for another Halloween. But as for Rob Zombie, Halloween 2 would be his last big budget movie and his last real box office success. Everything in the years since has been done on a very small budget, and making very little impact outside of a small group of dedicated fans. In the end, I think Zombie's Halloween films did more damage to his prospects as a director than they did to the franchise itself. Michael Myers is an icon, and has easily bounced back to major success. But Zombie and major film studios have stayed away from each other, likely due to the director being fed up with making compromises for big budgets, and studios not seeing him as a bankable creator. For a few years there, whether you liked him or not, it seemed like Rob Zombie had become an influential and important horror director, driving interest and conversations through controversy and quality. That's simply not the case after Halloween 2. And as for Michael Myers, the shape would soon return, bigger than ever.
Didn't mean it was better though. I enjoyed. Hold up. Okay. Like I enjoyed the first two when Halloween came back, and like the other one, but that last, what was it? Halloween Ends. Did not like that. Just because it came back bigger did not mean it was better. I still believe that Rob Zombie. And I'm no Rob Zombie fan. Like I don't know a lot of his work. I know those two. I forgot that he did do The Devil's Rejects. I forgot about that. But it's not me talking like I'm a huge Rob Zombie fan, because I'm not. I don't know much about him. But I know those two movies made me uneasy. And I love the storyline with it. It just brought more flavor to the Halloween franchise. And it was more darker and terrifying. If you want horror, that one brought more to it, in my opinion. So, like, there's already, like he said, great tension with Halloween with the older ones. Rob Zombie took that and elevated it, in my opinion, and added great story to it. So Rob Zombie had his vision, and to me, it worked. And I'm glad he had, I just want to do these two and I'm done. He ain't one of those people like, oh, it's successful or whatever, I want to keep going. No, he was done. Now, whatever he's doing with his movies, I don't know. Like I said, I don't really follow him like that at all. So, hope the best for you, but for Halloween 1 and 2, I think it did a great job. Highly underrated. I know some people that say that's like the worst Halloween. I completely disagree. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But anyway, let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Shout out to, Matt Draper. I'll put the original video in the description below. Well, your name's on the video right there. But, yeah, I'll put the original video in the description below. But thank y'all so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think. I'll see you later.